Assalamu alaikum, friends of Book Bites. We've had such a fantastic year of amazing reads, and we're very grateful from ourselves at the team at Salam Media for the amazing support. Throughout the different seasons that we've had this year, and so this is a wonderful roundup, hopefully, of all the reads we've had and the great excitement we've had in terms of festivals opening up, especially after the pandemic when everything had come to a bit of a halt. So on tonight's show, I really want to talk about my top five reads. And when I was preparing for the top five, I sat back and thought about how it's not even possible to just bring it down to five because there've been such amazing reads out there from the different genres, both locally and internationally. So we're going to try our best to sort of bring this down to the five for now and talk about a few that might be good recommendations for reads that you might be looking at. Before I get into the list, please be reminded that the Gauteng International Book Fair is on this weekend on Saturday, the 9th of December from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. with an amazing setup. All local and international authors coming together for some great discussions, book talk, literary greats, and new authors rubbing shoulders alike at the Ubuntu Lifestyle Center in Soweto. So go to their page, Gauteng International Book Fair, and please do get your tickets there and join the foray. A nice way to get into the holidays, especially if you're looking for book gifts. Um, with the top five for the year at least of my reads, I started out with an international read called Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, and I believe that's been made into a series recently. I think as recent as October 2013, um, when the first season was launched. Lessons in Chemistry is a book set in the 1950s about a scientist named Elizabeth Zott, and she's has this dream of becoming a very well-known scientist, but it's challenged by a society that says women belong in the kitchen, they belong in the domestic space. She then accepts a job when she feels the frustration of male colleagues just sending her off to wash beakers instead of actually get into the meaty experiments that she has hypotheses to test. She leaves and gets a job on a TV cooking show and sets out to teach a nation of housewives way more than recipes. And what she does, she sort of amalgamates her love of cooking with her knowledge of chemistry, and she turns this into a very empowering show and a very successful show at that about women, about women's issues. She tackles a variety of issues like gender-based violence and various aspects, and this makes this a very engaging and powerful read. But also the characters are very believable. You start to enjoy reading about Elizabeth Zott and her personality, and her personality really grows on you as you get to know more about this character. So a highly amenable read. I think all the book clubs are taking onto it. Obviously, it's been turned into a series and something that definitely you want to look out for, you want to watch, and you want to read this book. So I'm not just appealing to those with the visual sense, but definitely, go out and read this book. Book four on the list is a special favorite, the kind of book that I would pick up at any stage. Spark, Spark by well-known author Azim Jamal, another international author, a motivational speaker. Azim Jamal is known for his corporate Sufi series. And what he did was he retracted from the corporate space and started writing these motivational stories and I think in the beginning he self-published his work. And it took off in a major way because of the kind of message that he was willing to give. And Azim, in his own words, says, this book is for those who are looking to break beyond success. Now, we always talk about trying to motivate people to get into a successful space. He calls it finding your flow, which is like really being in the zone of your career. But he says you want success to not just be a material or financial success. You don't just want to prove to yourself that you can do it in your space. You want success that is blended with meaning and significance, and that is possible only when your inner spark is ignited. Someone who embodies the spark has a spring in their step, a twinkle in their eye, an echo in their voice. Their heart is open and they're glowing with positive energy. The flow state, in other words. So, according to him, the spark has five ingredients, which are encompassed in the acronym SPARK, and S stands for service. Because without service to humankind, you're not actually making a difference. Your success becomes meaningless. He talks about purpose. Do something that you're passionate about, but that you have a purpose, that you find that you actually are making a shift, creating that difference. A for attraction. So when you're already in a space of gratitude and in a flow state, he believes that you will attract the opportunities necessary to, to sort of sustain this journey of service and purpose and success and ultimately of significance. And then he talks about resilience, because you are going to have challenges. When you're on your journey, you are going to have challenges. You are going to find spaces where you need the resilience to pull yourself through. And K for knowing. Now, knowing is not just knowledge that we think of in terms of the written word, or in knowledge in terms of um, what you've accomplished to know in order to be good at your vocation. Knowledge is sometimes relying on that inner strength, that inner knowledge, that intuition. Trust your gut, and push yourself through with that, this ingredient for finding purpose, creating service, attracting more opportunities of the same. So Spark is a fascinating book in that sense. And how he does it is he doesn't preach through the material. He uses a story about a man who needs to deliver a document. He's climbing the sort of corporate ladder, and he needs to deliver a document to his boss, who's not sitting in a high rise building. He's sitting somewhere out in the Himalayas, and he's got to go find him, and he's got to just deliver this sort of document, and he can't understand why an email just can't be sent. But that journey of struggle actually teaches him why it's so important to want to sort of find significance in what you do, and not just success, and not just a bigger bank balance, or the bigger car that he wants to buy, a bigger apartment, or the yacht, or whatever it is that he has in his mind. So in the book, these principles are illustrated so well through this fable of this protagonist named Steve Harmon. And it's something that many successful people could relate to, because the struggle and the drive is not just about, like I said, more numbers, more zeros on your bank balance, or whatever the case might be. And especially if you've been so sort of stuck in the rat race, chasing material and outward success, and it's not led to deeper fulfillment. And I think the book will resonate with many who are still striving for success. By helping us to redefine what success actually means, each chapter tells a fable in a different way. The Sufis often say that we can teach through fables, and I think this book does it so well, about these five key principles in Spark. And they modeled on the story, but they can also be put into context into the reader's life. I can certainly put it into context in my life. They're reflection questions, so you could use a workbook and go through it in each chapter. And when you ask yourself these questions, I believe it opens up your potential to your own flow state, to find your own zone, to be in the zone in your own context, and to find purpose and obviously significance in your own life, to unleash that inner spark in your life. So do look out for Azim Jamal's work. Get yourself a copy of the book. Now, in terms of local material, I recently read the story of Durban's Casbah by Ghulam Vaid and Ashwin Desai, and I was absolutely fascinated. I think that this book is, it documents so much of our social history of the Durban Casbah. It is a book that talks about everything from the politics of the time and how politics was nurtured through the Casbah, some of the great personalities that came out through the space, whether they were literary greats, sportsmen, politicians, activists of the time, medical doctors, scientists, and the like. And that's why I call it a social document of our time, and something very, very important and significant that sociologist Desai and historian Vahid have put together. Both professors have put together this very, very important part of their own research. But it's a handy sort of notebook, a historical notebook for the rest of us who want to read, who want to have a finger on the pulse of what really happened and where we come from, where our history arises from, in a part of the city, and also how we thrive through the spaces, how we thrive through the structures that both engaged and suppressed us during apartheid. and what has come of that. So please look out for a copy of Durban's Casper by Professor Ashwin Desai and Professor Ghulam Vaid, and they're well known in our spaces for the large body of work that they've put out there as well. And this is in no particular order, but it is my top five because they stood out for me. Another book that I talk about is The Blinded City by Matthew Willem Solomon, which talks about Johannesburg's inner city. And his research sort of took place over a period of 10 years, where he walked through the inner city and documented the stories and the lives of migrants within Johannesburg. But he also talks about so-called the hijacked buildings, and why he goes into this is because there are the stories of people who have been displaced, people who are disenfranchised, people who have been brought with hopes and dreams into the country, sort of exploited by slumlords within Joburg City who have hijacked major corporation buildings or sort of abandoned buildings and taken over these spaces and overloaded them with criminals, with desperate residents who often don't have services available to them under dire circumstances. And it's completely rearranged the dynamic of Joburg City Center, the valuations of properties within the space, but also the lives of people. And what happens is then when the city tries to take over or take control of the space, and these sort of evictions take place, people are then dehumanized. Ordinary families are split. Children are removed from their families because of the dire conditions. And I think Matthew Willem Solomon has done something very important here in both documenting the space, but allowing the reader to get into the debate, to be informed enough to get into the debate and say, is this what's happening in our country? And we must have a say in how this is regulated. And also in terms of our responsibility as the city, as cities around South Africa, as municipalities, and as its government, to take control of the human dynamic, to be able to provide the space for both urbanizing people coming from the rural areas, but also refugees coming from other parts of Africa coming into the country, and what rights and responsibilities do we have towards them according to our constitution, and how are we engaging that, how are we properly engaging that, instead of just dumping people out into slums further afield in tents, where there aren't proper services, where they're open to the elements and at the mercy of the elements, where they don't have access to proper medical care, can't find any kind of subsistence in that time as well. So please do get a copy of The Blinded City, another important documentation for us to read, especially as residents of Johannesburg. Um, and finally, very recently, we spoke to political journalist Kanita Hunter about her new book, Who Will Rule South Africa, which she co-wrote with award-winning journalist and fellow colleague Adrian Besson. Now, the thing with Who Will Rule South Africa, I mean, we've had a lot of political material coming out in the last couple of months. Many of them just sort of like a collection, an anthology, really, of articles that have been put out there and written. And what I find about Who Will Rule South Africa, what I found significant, is there's some hard-hitting it's an expose. It's a political expose. There's some hard-hitting commentary. They name and shame the way it's meant to be. They outline state capture, the Eskom sort of debacle, Bosasa, in very broad ways, and in some ways very particular as well. And I think it's important for us, again, to be informed as readers, as a votership, with the way things have been, and to be able to take charge, to be able to take back our country in ways. And Who Will Rule South Africa does this in a very, it informs in a very dynamic way. It's not a sort of boring kind of get through all this material. It's something that can be read by young and old. It's very informative. It's hard hitting. It cuts to the chase with the material, and it really is something that will empower the reader beyond what we've been getting in news reports and that sort of thing as well. As much as those are the five sort of books that I really picked out as my top five reads for 2023, there's some notable mentions to be made. I read a novel by Dr. Qureisha Dawood called Stirring the Pot, which was absolutely entertaining and beautiful as a read. I read Professor Salim Badad's Tennis Apartheid and Social Justice, which I also thought was extremely informative and an important read. A personal memoir by Gora Ibrahim. Ahmed Gora Ibrahim wrote No Regrets about his time at the height of his soccer career when he walks off the field and what he makes of his life as well. A very humbling read, a very powerful read. Another soccer legend. We read the memoir, The Legend of Zola Mohobi, about the Mamelodi Sundown story. And I also think that makes mention because if you're looking for Christmas presents, No Regrets and Zola Mohobi's book will definitely appeal. The Mamelodi Sundowns books will definitely appeal to your soccer lovers out there, people who enjoy biography, and not to forget, the story by Prof. Badat on tennis apartheid and social justice, because it also takes us back to the losses experienced by our talented sportsmen and women who are of color. From the international space, I read Honor by Triti Umrigar, which was a really another hard hitting sort of story, but incredibly beautifully written. If you read in Triti Umrigal for the first time, you will be hooked as I am. And Honor centers around Smita, an Indian American journalist, and Meena, a newly widowed mother in Mumbai. And Meena finds herself in the midst of unthinkable loss when her husband is murdered by her Hindu brothers because of his Muslim religion. And this story then opens up, I mean, these characters are so believable, so well drawn. But the story opens up the whole question around the dynamic in India, and the struggle of how politicians have sort of pitted Muslim against Hindu for so many reasons. But um, that sort of filters down into society. And it's become something that we need to discuss even as far afield as South Africa, because these sort of political alignments start to affect our experience on the ground here as well. And it's something we need to talk about. But I think written in a novel form just makes that story and the dynamic more accessible in so many ways. So we have Lessons in Chemistry, Durban's Caspar, Spark, The Blinded City, Who Will Rule South Africa as the top five. And then my honorable mentions are Stirring the Pot, the novel, Tennis Apartheid and Social Justice, No Regrets by Gora Ibrahim, The Legend of Zola Mohobe, and Honor by Thriti Umriga. I do hope that you'll be picking up more of these copies because I know that these are my top reads. We had a fabulous array of almost more than 40 books this year, including the Ramadan festival. We focused on Quranic material. But there's also some exciting material to look forward to in the new year. I know that well-known author Shabnam Khan will be launching a book next month. Not only will it be launching locally, but it will be launching throughout globally, I think, also in January. It's called The Jinn Waits 100 Years. She's the author, if you remember, of Onion Tears a few years ago. And we're definitely looking forward to seeing what she has. And I hope to have her on Book Bites as soon as the new season begins in January. I have some fantastic news as well. I'll be launching my new book in February. It's called Darlings of Durban. I had huge fun writing this particular novel, and I look forward to sharing it with readers, with audiences, and hearing what people have to say. It's also written, most of my novels have been written about Johannesburg. This particular book is a tribute to my favorite coastal city, meaning Durban in South Africa, but it also deals with a range of concerns that women face through a sort of fun vehicle of fiction, bringing together these different characters, the dynamic between these sisters or the sisterhood, which calls themselves, refer to themselves as the Darlings of Durban. And I definitely look forward to seeing what readers will feel and experience through my story, Darlings of Durban. It will be published by Kwala in the new year, and I look forward to engaging through launches and reviews with the readership. And once again, thank you for the great support and the ongoing encouragement that I receive through emails and social media interaction and through readers as well. That's it for us from this season. Season 9 has had a beautiful roundup. I've had the opportunity to speak to some of the best writers out there, both internationally and locally. We've celebrated our local literature in so many ways on the platform. Great appreciation to the team behind the scenes at Book Bites, who are constantly just keeping the flow. And we've been supported and buoyed by this enthusiasm for the literary field, for our literature, for local material especially. And also, we've been enhancing the workshops out there as well with the schools through the Nisa Kamar series workshops. I do hope that in the new year we'll see more writing from younger readers and older readers as well, and especially a greater enhancement of memoir. I think that we're all living stories. We all need to write our stories. Please be out, go out there, engage with the festivals. Don't forget about the Gauteng Book Festival this weekend. Speak to our local authors. It's a great way of getting into their minds and seeing what the process is about, celebrating that process, and maybe engaging some of that process into your own journey as a writer, because I believe we all have a story out there, a story to tell, a story to sell. With that, that's it from us this weekend on Book Bites. I hope you enjoyed our session in our season. Until we meet again next year, inshallah. Fi amanallah. That's it from us on Book Bites with Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.